I'm Tom Hillegas. I've developed an organization called the Haunted House Company, solely for the benefit of the Jaycees, to help Jaycee chapters in every part of the country become involved in this very profitable haunted house project. During Halloween 1975, the Haunted House Company toured more than 35 Jaycee haunted houses. We visited houses in Kansas City, Denver, Detroit, Cleveland, Nashville, Louisville, Indianapolis, and all points in between, looking for houses that were unique, that would provide an education for Jaycees wishing to become involved in this project. We filmed conventional houses, warehouses, basements, factories, schools, churches, new construction, virtually every kind of facility which might lend itself to the Jaycee Haunted House project. We saw empty storefronts, such as this one here. This fronted a tent in Rossford, Ohio. And here in Livonia, Michigan, these enterprising Jaycees took 3 semi-trailer vans and built a very unique haunted house, which was also very portable. And they ran 20 to 30,000 kids and adults through this house in a parking lot in a shopping center in Livonia. Regardless of the kind of house that was used or facility that was used, Jaycees involved large numbers of people from their community who lined up and paid up to $2 to go through these haunted houses, and sometimes waited in a pouring down rain and waited for many hours just to get into this house. And they weren't all kids, many were adults. Here in Plymouth, Michigan, they used a witch and a werewolf to entertain the people who had to park in a parking lot that was separated from their haunted house by a little wooded area. And as they came through the wooded area, they met these 2 characters. And then, of course, that was free, and now they have to pay, and they go into the haunted house where guys like this are hanging in a hallway, supposedly dead, until they get in that hallway with him. And here's that facade that fronts a tent in Rossford, Ohio, a suburb of Toledo. And inside of that tent, where they ran 40,000 people through in Halloween 1975, they had the Frankenstein monster. And here's the Dr. Frankenstein trying to control this monster and hold him back away from the audience, of course unsuccessfully. And yet this scene here, the bloody bathroom scene, was judged by all the kids that we interviewed as the best in the house. Kids like all that blood and gore, like here, this Willard scene, Willard the rat. And you can see in this tent it afforded the Jaycees the opportunity to provide better crowd control. It was an excellent house throughout. And here in this torture scene, you can see the poor, unsuspecting victim with the knives in the box being closed down and the blood running out of the bottom of the box. And here's another scene, typical of what they did in Rossford, where they set up very well. They had victims, and the monsters would attack the victims, and then they would attack the audience, like the Wolfman, who attacks this young lady. And maybe she's enjoying it too much, but the audience does too. And here's the creature from the Black Lagoon. Most of the houses on the tour utilize the guillotine, where the head pops off, a little blood and gore, and then the head is thrust in the faces of the audience. Also in Rossford, they had a very elaborate sound system, one of the best that we saw. Each room had its own unique sound effects, and that was all contained inside of this little trailer unit here in the tent. And you can see the platform up above the tent. And here's Denver, Colorado's house, and in Denver they utilize this great big giant searchlight. They charge $2 a person to get into the house, and when they turn that light on, the crowds formed. When they turned the light off, the crowds disappeared. They felt it was well worth the investment. Inside of the Denver house, Dracula comes out of the false bottom in this casket, grabs his victim and hauls her away down inside of the casket. Obviously, she's a plant. Here's another scene that was an illusion scene that caused this girl to transform into this monster right in front of your eyes. See it again. We'll replay it. See how she turns into a monster? All it takes is 2 rheostats, 2 spotlights, and a glass. Denver also had some sex appeal in their house, only they used some very young talent, because as we get close to her, you'll notice that she's wearing braces. And all this says is that all the successful Jaycee haunted houses that we encountered utilize the young people in the community, because these kids, junior high school and high school kids in those communities, played the monsters, and they loved every second of it. And of course, all their schoolmates came to see them. This freed the Jaycees to play the executive roles and control the crowds. Here in Cleveland, you see Count Dracula coming through the French doors and snarling at the audience, and then planting a bite on the neck of his unsuspecting victim. And then turning his attention to the audience to attack them. I'd like to point out that we had to use very strong lighting to give you all of the action that was taking place in this scene. What the audience saw was only what they could see with the benefit of black lights and strobe lights, which was far more frightening to them. And here's the devil in all of his glory as he steps down off of his throne, where his victims are held in the basement below, which you can view through the missing floorboards in this first floor room where the scene was set up. Here's the Phantom of the Opera with his giant organ, and his victims screaming for help, which never comes from the audience. And here's the Phantom of the Opera as he was seen in Kansas City, using one of the Don Post masks. Another Don Post mask used in Dubuque, Iowa. However this Phantom of the Opera was portrayed, he was always effective. Here in Michigan, they used these rags hanging from the ceiling that the audience had to wade through. And the Jaycees, of course, stuck their hands in there. This was the most popular scene for most Jaycee chapters. And the giant spider comes out of the darkness and attacks the audience while they're distracted by the form below. And for those Jaycee chapters who felt that they couldn't run a haunted house, take heart. All you need is a few trees, because in Walled Lake, Michigan, a suburb north of Detroit, they had a haunted forest. One of the most interesting haunted, quote, house concepts that we saw. Because what's more frightening than being out in the woods at night? It really worked on these people. Young people and old people alike really enjoyed this haunted forest concept. Now, don't get too close to the audience if you're playing a monster. They're liable to strike back. And even with the strong lighting, these monsters were still effective on their audience. And here's yet another concept for those that may feel that they'll have difficulty finding a facility to host a haunted house in. In Toledo, Ohio, the Toledo Jaycees built this modular house right inside of the mall, where they had scenes like the one you see here, with the hunchback and with the Frankenstein monster. And this axe murderer here was the most popular scene in the entire house, according to the kids that we interviewed coming out. They loved that blood and gore. And now in this little recap, we'd like to take you back through some of the scenes that you've witnessed from around the country that have made these haunted houses so successful, allowing these chapters to earn from $40,000 to $50,000 to $60,000, which they were able to put back into their communities. In Livermore, California, the Jaycees won a crime prevention award for their haunted house because it was proven statistically by their police department that they had reduced the vandalism rate during Halloween by 400%. They had all of the vandals in their house. Truly, if Jaycees continue to become involved ever more professionally in this haunted house project, there will be a day very soon that Jaycees will own Halloween.